He hadn't touched her in a year, and yet he suddenly demanded a child. What he didn't know was that she had already uncovered every secret he thought she'd never find, and she was ready to turn the tables. Welcome to Mr. Roberts Stories. If you love gripping tales of love, betrayal, revenge, and shocking twists, you've just found your new home. Here, every story will pull you in, make your heart race, and leave you guessing until the very last word. Now, here's the deal. Watch till the end because the best surprises are always saved for last. And if you enjoy the story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss another unforgettable story. Every story on Mr. Roberts Stories isn't just something you watch. It's something you feel, something that stays with you long after the video ends. So, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. Trust me, you're going to want to watch every second. This is Mr. Roberts Stories, where every story is an experience. The crimson lipstick glared at her from the pristine white collar like a warning. Laura Decca stood frozen in the doorway of their master bedroom, the silk of her robe brushing softly against the polished marble floor. Her eyes traced the line of the stain as Philip Warren adjusted his Italian silk tie in the mirror, completely oblivious, or perhaps perfectly aware, of the evidence of his betrayal. Philip Warren, her husband of 1 year, white, 35, with the sharp features and commanding presence of a man born into wealth, didn't need to turn to her to make his intentions clear. For 12 months he had avoided her. Avoided intimacy, avoided conversation, avoided even casual touches. Now, after a full year of cold nights and separate bedrooms, he wanted a child. "Don't wait up for me, Laura. Some of us have real work to do," he said, voice low and detached, eyes fixed on the mirror. The words struck her like a knife. Laura's hands clenched the doorframe until her knuckles turned white, but her voice, when she finally spoke, was calm, too calm. Sweet, almost innocent. "Of course, darling. Should I make your excuses for the Beaumont merger dinner, or will you attend yourself?" Philip's gaze finally swept over her, but it wasn't warmth or affection he offered. It was cold assessment, the same way a collector inspects a piece of art, carefully noting its flaws. Laura took a deliberate step forward. The silk of her robe whispered against her skin as she moved closer, each movement precise, deliberate, a silent declaration of the woman she had become. "You must have brushed against someone at last night's gala," she said softly, her fingers reaching for the collar of his shirt. "There's lipstick here." Philip froze, just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Enough for Laura to know the truth. He had expected she wouldn't notice. He had underestimated her, as he had underestimated everything that didn't shine with gold or glamour. "Madame Du Bois," he said with a dismissive shrug. "Old pink lipstick. Not crimson. Not Celeste Morrow, the young, ambitious head of acquisitions whose perfume lingered in their home more often than Laura would have liked to admit." "How convenient," Laura murmured, letting a tissue graze the crimson stain, her tongue dampening it just enough to lift the mark without leaving evidence of confrontation. Philip's jaw clenched with disgust at her touch. "There. Clean. We can't have you walking into the office with imperfection, can we?" He jerked away, his expression twisting into something almost unrecognizable. "It's revolting," he snapped. "Don't touch me like that." Once, he had kissed her fingers when she touched his face. Once, he had pulled her against him in this very room, whispering that her touch was salvation. Now he recoiled like she was a stranger, a ghost. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 8, its deep chimes echoing through the mansion, a constant reminder of the time she had spent living in the shadow of her husband's lies. 40 acres of manicured gardens, 23 rooms, each colder than the last since Philip's affections had moved elsewhere. "Your mother called," Laura said, returning to a safer, neutral topic. "She wants us at the family dinner on Sunday. She says it's important." Genevieve Warren, Philip's mother, was a force of nature wrapped in Chanel, a woman whose approval had always felt conditional, filtered through the icy lens of lineage, wealth, and social status. From the beginning she had made her disapproval of Laura clear. Not quite the right pedigree, not enough connections, not the right everything. Philip, checking his Patek Philippe, barely acknowledged the reminder. "We'll be there," he said. Even the word we sounded hollow, a cruel mockery of a marriage that had been slowly unraveling for the last 12 months. Laura's lips curved in what might have been mistaken for a smile, but it was nothing more than a mask. "Should I prepare for another discussion about my adequate breeding potential?" she asked, the sharp edge of her words concealed beneath polite intonation. Philip's lips curved, but it was no smile, more a wound, a scar pretending to be a curve. "Just smile and nod, Laura. It's what you're good at." He moved past her toward the door, and she caught another faint whiff of Celeste's perfume, French vanilla and jasmine, mingled with ambition and arrogance. Laura's heart didn't break. It didn't falter. Instead, a quiet, cold determination settled over her. I see everything, she thought. Every lie, every meeting, every whispered word behind closed doors. He may think he's winning, but he's already walked into my trap. The phone on her nightstand buzzed. Naomi, her best friend since college, had sent a message. Breakfast at the Carlton. You need it? Laura allowed herself a small smile, the first real one of the morning. Naomi had been her anchor through everything. The whirlwind courtship, the fairy tale wedding, the slow decay of what had once been love. Naomi didn't know all the details, but she knew enough. Laura moved to her walk-in closet, her fingers brushing against designer dresses Philip had once adored seeing her wear. Now she could drape herself in anything, even rags, and he wouldn't notice. She selected a simple black Giovini dress, her armor for the battles ahead. Her thoughts returned to the hidden folder in the false bottom of her jewelry box. Inside were photographs she had taken of Philip entering the Ritz-Carlton with Celeste last Tuesday, the hotel receipts, the text messages he believed were erased. My darling Celeste, just a few more months and we'll be free to be together. Laura will never see it coming. Pathetically devoted. That was what he thought she was. Laura smiled faintly as she applied a neutral rose lipstick, nothing like Celeste's predatory crimson. Her reflection in the mirror revealed a woman underestimated her entire life, by teachers, colleagues, even by the mother-in-law she had married into. But now she was more than underestimated. She was prepared. The doorbell rang. The staff had sensed the tension, walking on eggshells, afraid of stirring the invisible storm in the mansion. Laura picked up her phone and texted Naomi, the Carlton at 10. We need to talk about the plan. Because Laura Decca had a plan. Philip thought he was playing chess, but Laura was playing 3 moves ahead. The lipstick on his collar hadn't been an accident. It was the opening move. And Laura intended to turn his arrogance, his obsession with control, into his ultimate downfall. She stared out at the gardens where they had renewed their vows just 6 months ago. The memory was suffocating, a cruel juxtaposition to the emptiness of their present. Before everything changed, before Celeste entered their lives, before the cold nights became permanent. Laura's eyes hardened. The crimson stain was gone, but the truth remained. She had all the evidence she needed. And tomorrow, when Philip demanded what he thought he was owed, a child, a legacy, a continuation of his dynasty, Laura would be ready. She took a deep breath. 12 months of silence, betrayal, and avoidance had taught her one thing. The woman Philip had dismissed was never weak. She had been underestimated, yes, but now she was vigilant, prepared, and armed. And the next move was hers. The Carlton's terrace overlooked the bustling city, but Laura Decca's eyes saw only memories, the fire and passion of a man she had once loved, now reduced to cold indifference. The morning air carried the faint aroma of espresso and croissants, yet Laura's mind was elsewhere, tangled in the web of Philip Warren's betrayal. Naomi, her best friend, leaned forward, concern etched in her hazel eyes. Tell me again why you're staying with him, Naomi asked, her voice cutting through Laura's reverie like a surgeon's scalpel. From where I'm sitting, this isn't love anymore. It's war. Laura let a small smile ghost her lips, sharp as glass. Oh, Naomi, she murmured, sipping her cappuccino. In the Warren world, love and war have always been the same thing. The only difference is who survives. Naomi's eyebrows shot up. You survived the first year, yes. But 12 months of cold shoulders, avoidance, and deceit. Laura, that's not marriage. That's torture. Laura's mind wandered back to the beginning, to the man Philip had once been. 2 years ago, rain had pelted her Brooklyn apartment while Philip stood outside, clutching a ruined bouquet of white roses. He had shouted into the storm, hair plastered to his forehead, soaked through to the bone. I'll tear down the stars for you, Laura Decca. His suit ruined, his expensive watch useless under the rain, he had been unrecognizable to the world, yet perfect to her. That was the man who had scaled fire escapes, canceled board meetings for a lunch she had casually mentioned, and whispered that her mind was the most brilliant thing he had ever encountered. Do you remember when Matthias tried to ask me out? Laura asked, leaning back in her chair, tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Naomi nodded, eyes alert. Philip nearly destroyed his own cousin because Matthias dared to show interest in me. Philip appeared like a storm summoned by thought alone, hand wrapping possessively around my waist. Matthias didn't stand a chance. Not then. Not ever. Naomi swallowed, unease flickering across her face. He loved you, or thought he did. Laura's smile was tinged with bitterness. He thought he did. But love isn't control, Naomi. It's not domination. And the man I married, well, he confused obsession with devotion. The memory of the vow renewal came unbidden. 6 months ago, Genevieve Warren, Philip's mother, had insisted on a grand public ceremony designed to quell rumors swirling around their marriage. Philip had been flawless that night, devoted, tender, perfect in every gesture. And the world had applauded their union as the epitome of power and love. But the moment they returned home, the private vows, the closeness, the intimacy, they all vanished. "I'm tired, Laura," he had whispered, voice low, like the cold wind that swept through the Warren estate. That was the moment the avalanche began. 12 months of avoidance, coldness, and meticulous cruelty. And then came Celeste, Laura continued, voice steady. Celeste Morrow. Head of acquisitions. Young, ambitious, beautiful. She doesn't just want a promotion, she wants everything Philip was never satisfied with. Naomi's lips parted. "You've noticed the perfume. The hotel charges. The late-night dinners." "Yes," Laura said, leaning back, eyes narrowing. "I've seen everything. Every meeting, every text, every lie he thought he had hidden. He wants a child first, secure his succession, his dynasty, and then he intends to leave me with nothing. That's why he's been cold all this time. That's why he's ignored me for 12 months. Naomi's voice dropped to a whisper. "Laura, that's insane. He's planning to use you, manipulate you, and you're thinking of, what?" Laura's smile curved, faint but unmistakable. "I'm not thinking, Naomi. I've already begun." She reached into her purse and produced a second phone Naomi had never seen. On its screen were screenshots, GPS trackers, hotel receipts, and text messages carefully documented over the past months. Each evidence point painted a damning portrait of Philip's duplicity. "See this," Laura said, scrolling through the files. "Tuesday, 8 p.m. Lernerdang restaurant. He was supposed to be at a client meeting. Hotel Four Seasons, same week. Text messages carefully deleted, or so he thought. Every move predictable. Every pattern carefully mapped." Naomi leaned in closer, her voice shaking. "Laura, if he finds out you're tracking him?" "Let him try," Laura said, her tone soft but steel beneath the surface. "Philip believes I'm naive. That I won't notice the patterns, won't see the lies, won't take action. But I see everything. I've always seen everything." Her mind shifted to the man she had fallen for, the man who had taken her to Paris because she had never seen the Louvre. The man who had whispered, "I want to give you the world. Every beautiful thing should be yours." The same man who now treated her like a ghost, like a pawn in a game he thought he controlled. Naomi reached out, placing a hand over Laura's. "Do you love him anymore?" Laura's eyes met Naomi's. "Love isn't blind, Naomi. Love doesn't mean ignoring betrayal. Love doesn't mean letting someone destroy your worth. I loved him once, yes. But now I'm focused on survival and strategy." The memory of the hotel incident, the whispered promises, and the stolen moments flooded her mind. 12 months of careful observation had taught her something critical. Philip was predictable. His arrogance, his obsession with control, his fear of losing status, they were all tools she could use against him. She pulled out a hidden folder from her purse, one Naomi had never seen before. Inside were documents more damning than any words could describe. Bank transfers to Celeste, private messages, hotel bookings, and the unredacted prenup clause that guaranteed Laura everything if Philip's infidelity could be proven. Naomi's eyes widened. The prenup? He made a mistake? Laura's voice was calm, almost eerily serene. "He thinks no one could ever prove it. He's right. Most people wouldn't even notice. But I did. And I have the evidence. He thinks he's hunting prey, but he's already walking into a trap." The truth settled over them like a storm. Philip Warren, the white billionaire husband who had treated her with disdain, had underestimated her. He had thought she was naive, passive, weak. But Laura Decca had been watching, planning, waiting. Every action, every lie, every betrayal, it had been logged, traced, and stored. And now the countdown had begun. Philip would demand the child he believed was his birthright. But when he did, Laura would reveal the web of lies he had spun so carelessly. She would show him that the woman he had dismissed, underestimated, and treated like a ghost had already taken control of the game. Naomi reached out again, squeezing Laura's hand. "Do you think you're ready for what's coming?" Laura smiled faintly, her eyes hard with determination. "I've been ready my entire marriage, Naomi. I just had to wait for the right moment. And that moment is almost here." The city below sparkled in the morning sun, oblivious to the storm brewing within the Warren mansion. Laura sipped her coffee, savoring the bitter warmth, and for the first time in months, felt the sweet taste of power. 12 months of silence, coldness, and betrayal had forged her into something stronger than she had ever been. Tomorrow Philip would reveal his hand. Tomorrow, the man who had thought himself untouchable would see the woman he had tried to destroy. And Laura would be ready. The Warren estate felt colder than ever that evening. 12 months of Philip's calculated distance had transformed the mansion from a home into a battlefield, where every step, every glance, every whispered word could carry an invisible threat. Laura Decca moved through the hallways with deliberate grace, her fingers tracing the edge of her black Giovini dress as if it were armor. Tonight she was not just walking through a house, she was surveying a war zone. The soft click of her heels echoed across the marble floors, mingling with the muted hum of the estate's security system. Each room, each hallway, each antique furnishing held memories of what once had been warmth, passion, love. And each one now screamed betrayal. The cold indifference of Philip Warren, her white billionaire husband, was a palpable presence in every corner. Laura paused in front of the vanity, lifting a folder from its hiding place in the false bottom of her jewelry box. It was not just any folder, it was the key to understanding, controlling, and ultimately dismantling the world Philip had thought was untouchable. Hotel receipts, screenshots of text messages, GPS data, and bank transfers were meticulously organized within. But the most critical piece was the prenup clause. Philip had been careless. His arrogance had convinced him that Laura would never notice, never act, never challenge. But the unredacted clause clearly stated, if Philip engaged in infidelity, Laura would be entitled to everything. Not just a financial settlement, but total claim over his assets. Everything. She traced the lines of the legal document with her finger, a smile curling faintly on her lips. He thinks he controls me. He thinks he's untouchable. But he's not smart, he's just rich. A soft chime announced a text message. Laura's secret phone buzzed. It was Philip. Don't wait up. Client dinner running late. She opened the tracking app on the device she had secretly installed weeks ago. His location popped up, Celeste Morrow's apartment. 2 hours exactly. Every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork. Philip, predictable in arrogance, predictable in lust, predictable in his underestimation of her. Naomi's voice echoed in her mind. Laura, this is dangerous. If he finds out. Laura's voice, soft and steel-edged, whispered back to herself, he already has. The cold evening air seeped through the slightly ajar balcony door. She stepped outside, letting the wind whip around her, brushing her dark, burnished skin with its invisible fingers. This estate, this marriage, this man, everything he had thought was under his control was now under hers. Her mind replayed the incidents she had meticulously documented. Tuesday dinners at exclusive restaurants, hotel stays in suites under the pretense of conference calls, secret messages deleted too hastily but never truly erased. Philip's confidence was his weakness, and Laura had weaponized it. She returned to the hidden folder, pulling out a series of photographs. Philip, in crisp designer suits, entering Celeste's apartment building, hands brushing hers, smiles exchanged with the ease of men who think no one is watching. But someone was watching. Someone had been watching, recording, documenting. And that someone was her. The mansion's silent halls seemed to echo with the ghosts of promises broken. Philip had once whispered against her ear, breath hot with passion, "You're my salvation. Only mine." Now he was a stranger, a man obsessed with control, blind to the strength and intelligence of the woman he married. Laura closed her eyes, recalling the times he had taken her to Paris, the Louvre visits, the whispered declarations of devotion, the stolen mornings and secret nights. Those moments had built a foundation of trust, a bridge he had now burned with indifference and betrayal. Her phone buzzed again, a reminder from Naomi. Breakfast tomorrow, discussion about the plan. Laura smiled faintly. Every ally counted. Every friend, every carefully chosen confidant, was a piece in the game she was orchestrating. The real challenge, Laura knew, wasn't merely to expose Philip's infidelity. It was to uncover the true extent of his plan. He wasn't simply content with betrayal, he wanted a child. He intended to secure an heir, solidify his dynasty, and discard her when her role was fulfilled. She had overheard fragments of conversations, slivers of Philip's obsession with succession, his cold focus on legacy. The revelation had left her blood cold but her mind sharp. Her eyes fell on a set of emails she had extracted from his private server. Discussions about insurance policies, succession planning, and his strategy for using her as an incubator were carefully laid out in digital clarity. Each sentence dripped with arrogance. Each plan assumed her ignorance. Laura's lips curved, her smile unreadable as she began to organize her response. She wouldn't move hastily. She wouldn't act on emotion. Philip had always thrived on control, on manipulation. But she had patience, intelligence, and evidence. The pendulum was swinging. Soon it would strike. She thought of the staff, the housekeepers, the chauffeurs, and secretaries. Many had already sensed tension in the mansion, had felt the unspoken hostility, the invisible chess match. Laura had even subtly ensured their observations would support her. Small details, misplaced documents, subtly observed meetings. Everything was a piece of her growing control. Her gaze fell upon the wedding album, the photos capturing a naive love now tainted by betrayal. The day they exchanged vows, the public declarations, the smiles captured in high society's flashbulbs, it all now felt like a stage play. Philip had been the actor, Laura the unwitting audience. But the performance was over. She tucked the folder back into its hiding place, her movements fluid, deliberate. Laura Decca, once underestimated, now held all the power. Philip's next moves would be calculated, but so would hers. The unredacted prenup, the GPS data, the photographs, the emails, all tools in her arsenal. The mansion seemed to exhale with her, as if even the walls recognized the shift in control. Philip Warren might believe he was plotting, scheming, securing his future. But Laura had already positioned every piece, anticipated every move, and calculated the ultimate play. A soft chime announced another text from Philip. "I'll be late. Don't wait for me." Laura's fingers hovered over the screen, but she didn't respond. She didn't need to. She knew where he was. She knew what he was doing. She knew the game, and she had already begun her strategy for victory. Naomi's voice, always present in the back of her mind, reminded her, "Don't let emotion cloud your plan. Precision is your weapon." Laura nodded to herself. Precision, patience, power. Philip had underestimated her, assumed she was passive, assumed she wouldn't see, wouldn't act, wouldn't fight. But 12 months of betrayal had forged her into something stronger than she had ever imagined. The night deepened, and the Warren estate lay in a deceptive calm. Outside, the city thrummed with life, unaware of the storm building within the walls of wealth, power, and deception. Laura stood at the balcony, the folder secure in her hands, and for the first time in 12 months, she felt a surge of clarity, purpose, and control. Philip Warren had underestimated her. Philip Warren had assumed his wealth and charm were enough to suppress her intellect, her observation, her strength. But Laura Decca was no longer the naive woman who had fallen for the fire in his eyes 2 years ago. She was strategist, observer, and executor. And soon, he would discover that the woman he had tried to destroy had already won the first battle. The crimson stain on his collar had been just the beginning. And Laura Decca intended to finish the game. The Warren estate was silent that night, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, it's the prelude to a storm. Laura Decca moved through the grand hallway with quiet purpose, each step measured, each breath steady. 12 months of betrayal, 12 months of watching, documenting, planning, it all led to this evening. Philip Warren's study door was closed, a faint glow escaping from beneath the frame. He was likely reviewing financial statements, emails, or some new acquisition plan, oblivious to the trap waiting for him. Laura paused at the doorway, glancing down at the folder tucked securely under her arm. The culmination of every secret, every lie, every betrayal he had committed over the past year. Hotel receipts, GPS logs, photographs, incriminating text messages, and most importantly, the unredacted prenup clause that guaranteed her everything in the event of his infidelity. She could hear his voice inside, muttering to himself over numbers and spreadsheets, completely unaware that the walls themselves were now witnesses to his duplicity. Her lips curved into a faint smile, one of triumph, quiet but potent. He thinks he's untouchable. But he's not smart, he's just rich. Laura entered the room. Philip's head lifted slowly, a flicker of surprise crossing his face, quickly masked by his usual arrogance. "Laura," he said, voice steady, though the faint tension beneath it didn't escape her notice. "I didn't expect you to be up." "Of course," Laura said, her voice soft, almost playful. "I have been busy." She set the folder gently on his polished mahogany desk. The papers whispered against the surface, a subtle herald of the storm about to unfold. Philip's eyes flicked to the folder. His jaw tightened imperceptibly, though he tried to hide it behind a mask of indifference. "Busy with what?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but Laura could sense the micro-twitch of nerves beneath his composed exterior. "Oh, the usual," she replied, stepping closer. "Observing, documenting, planning." Her dark eyes met his steel blue ones, and for the first time in months, Philip felt the weight of her gaze. The gaze of a woman who had watched him, studied him, and finally understood the depth of his deceit. Philip shifted slightly, trying to regain his usual composure. "Laura, if this is about Celeste." "No," she interrupted smoothly, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "This isn't about her. This is about you. About everything you thought you could hide." She opened the folder, spreading out the evidence meticulously. Hotel receipts from late-night stays, GPS locations tracing his habitual visits to Celeste's apartment, photographs capturing his betrayal in stark detail, text messages he believed were deleted but had been recovered. And finally, the prenup clause, highlighted and annotated, the unredacted section granting her total control over his assets if he committed infidelity. Philip's face hardened, his arrogance flickering under the surface. You've been tracking me?" His voice was low, dangerous. "I've been watching," Laura said softly, almost lovingly, though each word dripped with venom. "I've been watching every move, every lie, every whisper behind my back. You thought you were clever. You thought I wouldn't notice the pattern. But you underestimated me, as everyone does." Philip stood slowly, the polished wood of the desk under his fingers. "And what do you intend to do with all of this?" His voice was controlled, but the tension was unmistakable. Laura's smile was cold, predatory. "I intend to do exactly what you thought I couldn't. I intend to protect myself, and I intend to win." Philip's eyes narrowed. "Win? What are you talking about?" Laura leaned in, placing a hand lightly on the folder. "You wanted a child first, didn't you? To secure your succession, your dynasty. To use me as an incubator and then discard me when your legacy was safe. But here's the thing, Philip." Her gaze hardened. "I've been 3 moves ahead this entire time." Philip's expression flickered with unease, though he tried to maintain his composure. You can't." "Oh, I can," Laura interrupted. "You left me cold, distant, and betrayed for 12 months. You underestimated my intelligence, my patience, and my resolve. You thought your wealth made you untouchable. But all you did was walk me into a trap of your own making." Philip swallowed, tension rising visibly. "And you think this folder, these receipts, these texts, this changes anything?" "It changes everything," Laura said. "Every late-night hotel, every secret meeting, every touch you thought you could hide. I have proof." "And the prenup, Philip? The unredacted clause? If infidelity occurs, I get everything. Not just a settlement, everything. Your empire, your assets, your legacy, all mine. And yes, you've been unfaithful. Repeatedly. Habitually. Predictably." Philip's jaw tightened. "This is absurd. You're playing a dangerous game." Laura stepped closer, letting the faint light from the desk lamp illuminate her face. "No, Philip. This isn't a game. This is checkmate." For a moment, the room held its breath. Philip's mind raced. 12 months of calculated infidelity, 12 months of cold manipulation, 12 months of believing he could control her. And now, it had all collapsed under the weight of Laura's precision. She watched him carefully, cataloging the subtle signs, the tightening of his jaw, the flicker of panic in his eyes, the faint tremor in his hands. He had been confident, meticulous, untouchable. But she had seen the cracks, the predictable patterns, the arrogance that always precedes a fall. I can fix this," Philip said finally, voice strained, attempting to regain control. We can work it out." "I can." "You don't get to fix this," Laura interrupted, voice rising with authority. "You don't get to decide the terms anymore. You forfeited that right the moment you chose betrayal over love. The moment you chose her over me. The moment you underestimated me." Philip's shoulders slumped slightly, the arrogance drained from his posture. For the first time he felt the weight of his own hubris. The man who had believed himself untouchable, who had manipulated, lied, and controlled, was now powerless. Laura took a deep breath, her gaze softening for just a moment as she looked at the man she had once loved. "I loved you, Philip. I trusted you. I believed in the man you pretended to be. But that man doesn't exist anymore. The man you are, is someone I cannot, and will not, allow to control my life." She gathered the folder, closing it with a decisive snap. "Consider this your final warning, Philip. The evidence is secured. Any move you make, any attempt to manipulate or deceive further, will be met with the consequences outlined in this prenup. Everything is mine if you continue your games. And I assure you," she leaned closer, voice low and deadly calm, "I will not hesitate." Philip looked at her, eyes wide, the arrogance finally stripped away, replaced with the raw panic of a man who realized too late that he had miscalculated. "Laura, you?" "I am done waiting," she said, stepping back, her voice steady, commanding. "This is the end of your control. The end of your games. The end of your lies. And the beginning of a life where I decide my worth, my future, and my power. Not you." The room fell silent, the only sound the soft hum of the city below and the steady beat of her own heart. Philip Warren, the man who had once whispered that she was his salvation, now sat stripped of pretense, realizing the magnitude of what he had lost. Laura Decca turned on her heel, walking through the grand hallway toward her own suite. The folder tucked securely under her arm, the evidence of 12 months of betrayal, deceit, and manipulation ensured her victory. For the first time in a year she felt free, strong, empowered, and unshackled from the man who had tried to diminish her. She paused at the balcony, the night air brushing against her skin. The city lights sparkled like distant stars, oblivious to the storm that had unfolded within the mansion. A storm she had not only survived, but mastered. Philip Warren had underestimated her. He had assumed that wealth and arrogance were enough to suppress her. But Laura Decca had patience, intelligence, and evidence. And in the end, that was enough. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Laura Decca's new apartment, painting the room with gold. It was a different world from the cold grandeur of the Warren estate, a space that carried warmth, freedom, and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Laura stood by the window, looking out over the city that had once felt suffocating but now seemed full of possibilities. A year had passed since the storm that had nearly destroyed her. Philip Warren, the man who had tried to use her, manipulate her, and control her, was now just a memory, one she had turned into a lesson. The evidence she had gathered, the careful strategy she had orchestrated, had not only secured her freedom but had also redefined her life. She was wealthy, independent, and empowered in ways Philip had never imagined. More importantly, she was free from the suffocating expectations of his toxic family and his selfish desire for control. Her phone buzzed and a familiar name lit up the screen. "Naomi? Brunch today? I've got news." Laura smiled, the first spontaneous, unburdened smile she had allowed herself in a long time. Of course, she typed back, feeling the warmth of friendship that had never wavered, even in her darkest moments. She remembered that day, the confrontation, the folder, Philip's crumbling facade. How he had looked at her with disbelief, realizing too late that he had underestimated her. 12 months of betrayal, cold shoulders, and manipulation had only forged her into something stronger. Every late-night meeting, every secret rendezvous, every whispered lie had become ammunition, and she had wielded it with precision. Yet even in victory, Laura had learned something more profound. Power without self-respect is meaningless. She had fought not just to expose Philip but to reclaim her dignity, her intelligence, and her autonomy. And in doing so, she had discovered a version of herself she had never fully known. A woman unafraid, resilient, and unapologetically ambitious. As she moved through the apartment, her gaze fell on the folder she had kept as a reminder, carefully sealed and locked in a secure drawer. She had no intention of revisiting it, but it symbolized everything she had endured, survived, and conquered. There was a knock at the door. Laura's heart skipped, not with fear but anticipation. She opened it to find Naomi radiant as ever, holding 2 cups of coffee and a mischievous grin. "You look unstoppable," Naomi said, handing her a cup. Laura laughed softly, taking it. "I feel unstoppable." They sat by the window, coffee in hand, watching the city come alive below them. For the first time in a long time, Laura felt at peace. She was no longer defined by Philip's deceit or the Warren family's judgment. She was defined by her courage, her intellect, and her choices. And yet, even in this calm, a spark of something new ignited. A life filled not with fear or obligation but with genuine possibility. She had plans, ambitions, and dreams that were entirely her own. Maybe one day love would find her again, but it would be on her terms, with someone who respected her, cherished her, and never underestimated her. For now, though, Laura allowed herself to simply breathe. The heavy weight of betrayal had lifted. She was free. She was powerful. She was whole. As the city lights shimmered below and the morning sun climbed higher, Laura Decca whispered to herself, a quiet affirmation of triumph. "I am my own queen. My life, my rules, my victory." And with that, she stepped onto the balcony, feeling the breeze brush against her skin, the warm promise of a new beginning filling her chest. The storm of the past year was behind her. Ahead lay a life she had fought for, earned, and most importantly, deserved. The past was over. The future was hers.